This is New Patron Series 76B. We are exploring the Agrapha, or the sayings of Yeshua that are not found in canonical sources. This time we're going to look at the eschatological prophecy of Yeshua that was reported by Papias. Papias says this was told to him by John the Elder, who heard it from the Apostle John. It goes like this: the Lord used to teach about those times and say, "The days will come when vines will grow, each having 10,000 shoots, and on each shoot 10,000 branches, and on each branch 10,000 twigs, and on each twig 10,000 clusters, and in each cluster 10,000 grapes, and each grape, when crushed, will yield 25 measures of wine. And when one of the saints takes hold of a cluster, another cluster will cry out, 'I am better, take me, bless the Lord through me.' Similarly, a grain of wheat will produce 10,000 heads, and every head will have 10,000 grains, and every grain 10 pounds of fine flour, white and clean. And the other fruits, seeds, and grass will produce in similar proportions, and all the animals feeding on these fruits produced by the soil will in turn become peaceful and harmonious toward one another and fully subject to humankind. These things are believable to those who believe." And when Judas the traitor did not believe and asked, "How then will such growth be accomplished by the Lord?" the Lord said, "Those who live until those times will see." Now there are several related prophecies probably known to Yeshua. The Lord used to teach about those times and say, "The days will come." Well, he's speaking of the Messianic era, or the Olam Haba, meaning the world to come on earth. According to Jewish tradition, the Messianic era will be one of global peace and harmony, an era free of strife and hardship, conducive to the furtherment of the knowledge of the Creator. The theme of the Messiah ushering in an era of global peace is encapsulated in one of the most famous scriptural passages from the book of Isaiah. "They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift sword against nation, and they will no longer study warfare." When vines will grow, each having 10,000 shoots, and on each shoot 10,000 branches. In 1 Enoch, we read that each measure will produce 1,000, and each measure of olives will produce 10 baths of oil. That's barrels. And so what Yeshua has done, if this is authentic, he has changed 1,000 to 10,000, which is, by the way, the highest number you can make with Greek numbers. And on each branch 10,000 twigs, and in each twig 10,000 clusters, and in each cluster 10,000 grapes, and each grape, when crushed, will yield 25 measures of wine. By the way, I'm recommending this book called First Enoch, as a translation of Enoch, Book of the Watchers, and you can find it online. It's published by the Scriptural Research Institute. A much closer parallel appears in 2nd Baruch. "The earth shall also yield its fruit 10,000-fold, and on each vine there shall be 1,000 branches, and each branch shall produce 1,000 clusters, and each cluster produce 1,000 grapes, and each grape produce a core of wine," which is a huge amount of wine. You can find this translation of the Epistle of 2nd Baruch online. The publication by Whitters is available for purchase if you're interested. So we have to ask, is it consistent with Yeshua's eschatology as recorded in the 5 Gospels, which admittedly may reflect misunderstandings or interpretations by disciples and Gospel writers? So for that reason, what Jesus' eschatology was is hotly debated. The main point of agreement, however, by scholars is that Yeshua proclaimed John the Baptist's imminent advent or coming or arrival of the Malkuth, or so-called kingdom. I'll try to summarize Yeshua's eschatology based on what's found in the Beatitudes and Parables, Sayings, and the Logia in the 5 Gospels. 1. The Malkuth, or sovereignty of God on earth, is already appearing. This is a time of miracles and healing signs, and Yeshua's ministry of miracles and healing signs was meant to demonstrate this reality. After this will come a period of tribulation, before which the faithful saints will be taken to safety. Well, Yeshua predicted the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem, the siege of Jerusalem by Titus, which occurred in the years coming up to AD 70. And the followers of Yeshua, having heard his prophecy, were told to leave Jerusalem before it was closed under the siege and no one could get in or out. And so they did. They left. They emigrated from Jerusalem north to a place called Pella, and many of them became what we call Ebionites and other Jewish Christian sects. Then the Son of Mankind, the Baranash, or the new humanity, will manifest on earth. Christianity interpreted themselves as the new humanity, the new mankind. It will judge the works of the living and the dead. In the parable of the sheep and the goats, we get this clear statement that the Christ, or the new humanity, identified as the church, or as the bride of Christ, church as the bride of Christ, will make judgments about the works of people and of civilizations and kings and everybody else up to their time. Then a generation of saints in the Messianic age will arise with peace, harmony, and the plenitude prophesied by Yeshua. And that would be after that time, after the time of the coming of the new humanity, what the Christians would interpret as Christianity. Now, we have to ask, is the prophecy from a reliable source? The prophecy is not realized eschatology, as we find in John and Thomas. However, realized eschatology probably reflects Yeshua's proclamation of the coming and present kingship, or so-called kingdom of God on earth. So realized eschatology is another way of looking at the basor of Yeshua, that the kingdom of God is here now. But the prophecy is what we call future eschatology, as we find in the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And we find in many Beatitudes, Parables, and Sayings. It was told to Papias by a uniquely credible witness for the sayings of Yeshua, as opposed to the daughters of Philip, who prophesied and whose information was sometimes more fictional. Around AD 125 to 135, Papias wrote of 2 Johns teaching in Asia Minor. One John was associated with the 12, but the other was John the Elder. He was not an apostle, he was a disciple. Papias claims this was transmitted to him by John the Elder, a companion of the apostle John in Ephesus, and the probable author, by the way, many scholars think, of the Gospel of John, the epistles, and the Revelation to St. John. John the Elder had been a disciple of Yeshua, who was not, however, counted among the apostles in any of the Gospels that we can read. He was several years younger than the Apostle John and probably came from a royal family in Jerusalem and was thus quite literate. He could write. He can write well. He can write books. I recommend Martin Hengel's book, The Johannine Question, if you want to look into what scholars think about the writers of the Gospel and so on. The author of 2nd and 3rd John referred to himself as the elder. The author of the Gospel of John referred to himself as the disciple who is testifying about these things, the disciple whom Jesus loved, and the other disciple. Polycrates of Ephesus described John the Elder as a priest who wore the high priestly plate on his forehead. He was called the one whom Jesus loved. In this painting, we show one disciple leaning his head upon the shoulder of Christ, the beloved disciple. Some have tried to show the beloved disciple as Mary Magdalene. Others have said it was John the Elder. On Sunday, after the crucifixion of Jesus, Mary Magdalene reported the empty tomb to Peter and some of the other apostles. And John, the one whom Jesus loved, meaning John the Elder, raced Peter to the tomb. So we know he was among them for all of these events, and that he was very close to the apostles, and that he heard from them and from Yeshua himself many parables and sayings and so on. So we have to ask then, is this an authentic prophecy of Yeshua? Many scholars think not. But it is consistent with the future eschatology of God's kingdom on earth that Yeshua proclaimed. The source witness for this prophecy about the Messianic age was a disciple and a hearer of Yeshua, as well as a companion of the Apostle John in Ephesus, the beloved disciple John the Elder. It elaborates on the Olam Haba as it was known in first century Judaism, the Olam of God to come on earth. It uses the idiomatic Hebrew phrase 10,000, which is a phrase that you only find in Hebrew in order to mean many, more than we can count. And it uses Yeshua's typical rhetorical hyperbole to magnify the quality of fruit and grain that will be harvested. We know from other sources that it was 1,000-fold, but this boosts it up to 10,000-fold, which is a hyperbole. Each grain of wheat yields 10 pounds of flour. Each grape crushed yields 20 fine measures of wine. This is all rhetorical hyperbole that magnifies the quantity of fruit and grain that will be able to be harvested. It elaborates also on Isaiah's wolf lie down with the lamb prophecy in a unique twist that's not taken by other first century sages. Quote, all the animals feeding on these fruits produced by the soil will in turn become peaceful and harmonious toward one another and fully subject to humankind. This is from Isaiah 11:6, but he has taken this and elaborated it, and also used a typical rhetorical hyperbole. So I conclude that this is an authentic prophecy of Yeshua. Please click on the Patreon link in my description just below the video to become a patron, helping to sponsor my new videos on the pre-Christian teachings of Yeshua. Thank you very much.